Okay, so here's what I got to make one of those jigs. These things have like a 5/8 by weird ass tap. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but I have random nuts and bolts around here, so I'll use this as part of the jig for this because this ferrule is the one that comes off, and I can just tap the wood and screw this in. Or I bought these. I only got 2 of these left. I probably won't buy these again. But you drill a 1/2 inch hole and then you drill a deeper hole actually, but a 1/2 inch hole round, and set this in, and then this threads into this. So with that said, what I'll do is, these are just scrap pieces of hickory from when I did the windowsills. I'll glue these 2 together like this, and I'm going to drill a hole with the Forstner bit. I'll put a little bit of this is like medium CA glue in there just to hold it in place so it sits level, and then I'll take some 5-minute epoxy and I'll put it in there. But I'll drill the hole, and then I'll glue these 2 together, and I'll put them down on the table, and then I'll set this in so nothing moves once I put this in, because it needs to be straight up and down. So I will drill the hole over here, and then we'll go on to the next step. So center on this doesn't really make a difference. I mean, it kind of does, because when I put it on here, I'll wind up cutting this into like a rough-ass circle, and then I'll put it on that lathe and turn it down so it fits in the jaws of that chuck. So I'll just take this thing, and I won't go all the way through. I'll just go deep enough so I can put that bolt head in there and then be able to cover it with the epoxy. So it's flat. I'll be able to cover it with the epoxy once that head is in there. And then that's what I did on the other one. I made sure it was smooth enough here. After I turned the outside down, I actually smoothed that out, and then I put some washers. And I'll take a picture of that thing up close, just so when I tightened it all down, everything was flush on here, and that everything was, it was just at a 90. It worked out really well. So you can see on this other jig, it's just basically the same 2 scrap pieces of wood. And then this is epoxied in, and then what I did was I put these washers on here to make sure it was flat against this, because there was a little bit where that bolt went up. It did kind of go up a little bit. I didn't want to put my tool right into the bolt. And then I don't need a whole lot on those wine stoppers, so that's far enough. It cranks all the way down, and it just spins really true. So basically all I do here now is I set this close enough to the edge, because I'm going to clamp everything. And normally when I glue, I will try to, spread it out evenly and whatnot. But this thing is just, it's just a jig to hold this thing in place. I really don't care. Really? Everything's frozen out here. It's 30 degrees. It's going to be 4 degrees Saturday. It's ridiculous. There we go. Come on. Man. Woo! Oh, there we go. Come on. I promise there's some in there. It's just cold. Apparently I need to buy more. It's not going to come out very well at all. Most of this gets cut off anyway, but man, this stuff's cold. Ah, it's on my hand. I don't have a cool heated shop like you do. Basically, that's just going to sit there now. Again, this does not have to be perfect, because it is solely it's got a purpose, and once it's done, it doesn't have to move. It just has to hold on to this. The center's got a bunch of glue on it, and it's only going to be, well, this round by the time I'm done with it. Maybe a tad bit bigger. I think I made the other one a little bit too small. So my CA glue that I'm using here, the top to it got stuck on the inside, so I actually just got to kind of let it, whoa, hell, that's a lot. That's okay. Dribble in there. And I don't want that nut on there right now. I just don't want to lose it. And that'll sit in there. Hello. And I just make sure it's up and down. I mean, it's pretty well perfect right where it's sitting right now. And those Forstner bits are great for that, but I'm sure you use those too. And then I'll just hit it with a little of that activator just to keep it from moving. And then I'll be right back. I got to get something to mix that epoxy on. So I have this, I bought this Bob Smith 5-minute epoxy, and it works really well. I have other epoxies in the house, you know, but they're not 5-minute, they're not too fast. This is just a 1-to-1. The problem again is that this stuff is, it's cold out here, you know, so, but I just kind of, this plastic here, believe it or not, kind of put a glob on there, and you can see how thick that is right now because of the temperature out here. I'd like to mix this stuff on plastic instead of wood because this stuff's expensive, and then it absorbs into the wood, and that you actually wind up losing a little bit of it. And I don't want to lose any of it, so you can see how thick it is to mix. When they say 5-minute epoxy, that just means that you really have 5 minutes before it starts to set up. And you can see that is solid. That's not going anywhere. So I just kind of take it and push it down into the hole. Again, I try to scrape off what I can, try to get as much down in there as possible that I got. I shouldn't have to mix any more. I mean, with the super glue in there and this stuff. Super glue, CA glue, whatever. And I just try to push it down. I try to keep it off the threads, but sometimes that's hard. Stuff attaches really well. I will try to wipe those threads off in a minute. But that's also why I put those washers on that other one, because this stuff really isn't self-leveling like some of the other epoxies can be. So without it being self-leveling, it'll mound, and I just want it to be kind of flush. So what I did with the other one was after it was done, I actually took this and I put a threading tap. I went over the top of the threads just to make sure there wasn't any crap on there. So that'll sit like that. And then since I do have some stuff, I'm trying to keep the middle more than anything else without getting it all over the epoxy. I just throw another one in here to hold down the middle a little bit more. I don't have a real long one to get to the other side. I don't want to bring this in the house because I don't want the smell in there. So anyway, this will have to dry overnight like this. So I'll finish up the video this weekend, and then I'll show it to you, of course. But anyway, that's how I started to make that guy right there. All right, talk to you later. Bye. Okay, so figures while doing this, hickory is kind of a soft wood, but I had a damn catch. So I had to improvise a little bit on the corner here and kind of round this up. But it doesn't matter because as long as this is flat here, in my opinion, and I got to kind of taper it a little bit to the out, like kind of goes in a little bit, it's going to sit in that chuck against the back flush. So now I'll do is I'll take this off, put the chuck in, turn it around, and then I'll face off the front, chase the threads, and then I'm just about done. So like any other project that you do, this is hickory. The last one I made was out of, I think it was out of plywood. But anyway, hickory it's so hard, but it's so brittle too. Our cabinets are made out of it. But I actually got a catch and jacked up the back of this thing. So I had to make it flat, but a little bit concave to the inside. And then I cut a tenon on there. And then I had questions about, how true is it actually going to run? Well, if I turn it on, you can watch. That screw's it ain't moving anywhere. I know it's kind of hard to see, but it's perfectly, in line here. So I'm going to cut the face off of this a little bit because there is a little bit of that epoxy on this. So I'm just going to come in with that knife a little bit and cut this epoxy off. And then I'll show you what I do, because the threads do get they got a little bit buggered up because of the chuck that I used. I thought about putting tape around it, but I didn't want it to be uneven. So I'll deal with that. I'll chase those threads with a tap, and then it'll pretty well be good to go. So I'll be back after I face this down. So that's smooth, and there's a little bit of that epoxy that gets on those bottom threads. I'm not too worried about it, but I'll just chase this thing. I'm working around the camera, so it kind of sucks here. Get that started. I'll just chase this thing with the thread, and then I'll just work that stuff off of there. And then, because what I'll do anyway is I will put a large washer to hit the wood, a couple of small ones on there, and then a nut, and I'll tighten it on with a nut. And then this way, when I put that other threaded piece on this, when I drill it on the drill press, set that ferrule, and I screw it on here, this thing will just be flush up against it, and I don't have to worry about hitting anything. I don't have to worry about chopping wood anymore, or worry about hitting any metal with that lathe. So I'll pull this off here, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so everything's here. I turned this down here a little bit. I've already chased it with the thread chaser, and what I'll do is I'll put a washer on here, and yes, I know it's not the right size for that, but I also have epoxy down here, so I just want it to sit flush against the wood that I cut, and you can see all the way around it. Oop, it might be too high. It does sit flush, so I don't even need that one. I put a couple of them on there just so I don't need all that space either, and then I'll thread this all the way down. You know, people talk about repeatability, and this isn't a good idea because you can't get the same results. Well, if you put it on there and you make several of them in a row, and not just one, yeah, I agree. If you just do one and try to do another one, it may be off. I don't know, but if you do a bunch of them, then they're all going to be the same. So anyway, I tighten that down. I don't worry about any kind of super glue or CA glue, whatever, on this, because everything's like spinning in the same direction. Everything's tightening, loosening in the same direction. So I don't worry about that. I just sneak that down real tight, and you can see how nice and flush that is with that face. So then all you got to do is, when you make your blank, and if you use these, great, you can put this in your blank, and this will thread right onto here, and then it'll go all the way up, sit tight, and then you can do all your shaping, and you don't have to worry about hitting anything. And also, because it's the same thread as this, you can drill your hole and stick that right into your wood blank, provided you got that threaded properly, and then it'd be like having this on there instead, so, because these are the same. So anyway, that's how I do it. Is it right, wrong? I don't know. The people telling me how, oh, you shouldn't do that, you can't get the same results, you need to buy this, you need to buy that. You know, a lot of people buy a lot of things, and that's great, but this world was built by people who don't always buy everything, you know what I mean? And they make things. And I'm not an entrepreneur or a genius by any sort, but I will say that this thing is super easy to do, especially if you're only doing a couple of them, if you're a hobbyist. You know, why are you going to spend $30 on something that may or may not work? I mean, this threading is this different size from the bottle stoppers. I mean, this one's different. You can see the difference. This one's a little bit bigger. The threading, it's hard to see it maybe, but they're different. So why I got to buy two of them? I mean, no, I'm done. Had parts in the house, and I'm done. So anyway, don't always think you got to buy everything. I'm new to this, and I get it, but I have built things. I've done metal work before. This is nothing new. So don't go by the old convention. You know, somebody who's been doing this for 30 years, which I appreciate all their knowledge, tells you, you know, oh, you can't do that. Well, you can do that, you know, and do it. And if it works for you, great. If it doesn't, try something else. All right. Thanks for watching. Bye.